In this video, I'm going to talk about plants that I really would not grow again. Hello, I'm Rosie Hardy. This is Rosie Hardy Gardening. So one of them that I would not give house room in my own garden would be Lysimachia, nummularia, Aurea, or creeping jenny, the golden creeping jenny. Yes, it looks fantastic in a hanging basket, trailing down and looking really good, but you consider all of those stems that are hanging down, and they can make about 2 foot long, if not longer, in a hanging basket over the summer season. Just think where that is going to creep and go around in your garden. So you're going from a centre, you're talking about 2 feet long outspread, so that equates to 4 feet. You're talking about somewhere between a 60 centimetre, then double that, 120 centimetre, and it doesn't stop there, and it just sends out and sends out, and you leave a little bit just there and it keeps on growing. It is an absolute nuisance, and I have been in gardens where this used to be such a wonderful plant to put in as ground cover. Yes, brilliant ground cover. You try and get it out. So that is one plant that I really wouldn't have. And I know I love yellow plants and yellow flowering plants, but I'm sorry, that one just has to get dug up and moved, and I wouldn't buy it, or I wouldn't even get a cutting from someone and put it in my garden. So that's the first one. Another one which has become a little bit of a pain here in the UK, and that is Phyllostachys nigra, or the black bamboo. Now the Phyllostachys, at one stage they were all the rage. Everybody put black bamboo. It was probably the late 90s, early 2000s. Black bamboo went everywhere. And that's literally what it does when you put it in the garden. In a container, not a problem. It'll contain it. But if there are little holes at the bottom of that container, a little horn will get out and it'll creep out and off it goes, and it will take over the place. So that is something. I went to a garden once, and the lady, it was in the corner of her garden. It was taking the fence down with the horns. It was spreading into the next garden. We had to get a digger in to dig it out, and then we had to go back every year and just see if there was anything coming up, because if you leave one bit of that, off it goes. And unfortunately the horn, as it comes through, can pierce linings of ponds, and I've known people's ponds to actually be drained by the Phyllostachys getting in there and piercing the linings. So it's not something that really is a good idea, and I wouldn't put that in the garden. I'd think of other shrubs that have a similar stem type, or other grasses, but not that. So that is another one that is a no-no. Then I've got something called Silybum marianum. Now Silybum marianum is milk thistle, and it is utilised for making all sorts of tablets for people, and it is something that is used as a culinary, but in the garden, well, it's a waste of space. You get this huge big leaf that has this, quite nice white silver markings on the leaf, and it just takes up a huge amount of space. Then it comes up with its stems and its thistle-like flowers. I've got no problem with that, but it sheds seed everywhere, and it really is a waste of space because it's a massive, great big thing. It doesn't actually do very much, and so I'm sorry, that one is another one I'm not going to grow again. And on the same line, Acanthus mollis, or the straight bear's breeches. Yes, in some gardens it looks fantastic if it flowers really well, but the majority of the time it's this leaf which covers the ground. You have a mound of foliage, dark green, glossy green, that gets covered in mildew. It really is a mildew magnet, especially if people go and plant it in dry shade. It is just awful. If it's in better borders, then it just takes over the place. You get this huge big mound of foliage, and then these flower spikes that come up. Okay, they're all right, but there are better types of Acanthus to grow, and which flower better and don't take up so much space. So the leaf can get out to 1.50 metre by about 75 centimetres high. So that is sort of 4 or 5 feet across by 2 feet, 2.5 feet tall, of just a mound of foliage. It's like a green amorphous blob. I'm sorry, It's not a favourite. You dig it up, you think, great, I've got it all out. No, you haven't, because the roots go down. And some of the roots can be as thick as your finger, or they can be thicker than that, or they can be thinner, and they're wiry and they go off and they snap. One little bit snapped, because I tell you what, it's a really easy plant to take from root cuttings. So it is something that is very, very difficult to eradicate once it is in there, and you have to keep on digging to get it out of the ground. If it does keep on coming up, cut the foliage off. But again, that's one I'm not going to be growing again. Then we've got Rubus cockburnianus, and this is the white bramble, white stemmed bramble, sorry. Really beautiful in huge big plantings, but boy is it got thorns on it. And it's just not one I'd make house room for a small garden. Bigger garden, but do you know what? I'm not a fan of thorns. And on that note, there are plants that I just don't like to grow in the garden. Hate them is a little bit too harsh a word. Yes, I'll quite happy for other people to grow them in their gardens, but I'm not going to grow them in mine. So that includes roses. I love smelly roses in beautiful gardens where people have got room for a rose garden, but every time I go anywhere near a rose, I come back bleeding. It doesn't matter how many gauntlets I've got on, it doesn't matter how careful I am going in and pruning them, you can guarantee they will get me and attack me. So I'm sorry, roses are not in my garden. Or having said that, that is a little bit of a lie, because a friend of mine is determined that I am going to grow roses, and I do actually have 6 in the garden. 3 are in the ground. 1 is dwarf, no problem with that. 1 is a rambler, which I just allow and gets cut right back down to ground level, easy to deal with. Another one is one that I was given because it's one that is not produced a lot these days. And then the other 3 sit in a trough, and if I can cut them down to ground level and then bundle all of the remains onto the compost, well, actually it goes onto the fire, I'm happy with that, but I'm not having any more. That's it. No more. Berberis, again, I have the same thing with that. It's a fabulous plant in other people's gardens. It makes a really good deterrent, a really great hedge. But I have done landscaping for long enough, and I have planted enough Berberis to know how painful the thorns are on that. So that is another one that wouldn't go in my own garden. Can go in other people's, I have no problem. Then the ones which I have a real problem with are variegated plants. It does depend upon the variegation. So for instance, I don't like Aucuba, japonica, Aurea variegata, or any of those ones which got those horrible little blotches all over them. Really don't like those. Same for Farfugium, japonicum, the leopard plant. It has these yellow spots, these big leaves with these yellow spots. Yes, it looks a little bit like leopard spots, but the plant looks sick, it looks unhealthy, it looks like someone's got the Roundup out and sprayed it. Or, you know, you've been doing the chlorine in the pool and it's splashed over and you've got this bleaching. No, I think those plants look ill. Other forms of them, okay. Do you know what? I go around gardens and I see them growing and I think, oh, you poor plant, you look really ill and very sorry for yourself. So that's the plants that I dislike, won't grow again, won't have in my own garden. Happy for other people to have them, and probably some people go out there, oh, I love those. Well, that's how all of us gardeners have different likes, different dislikes. And sometimes it depends on what age you are. So gradually, as you go through your gardening life, you'll say, oh, I don't like that. Oh, and then you grow it a bit later on and go, why didn't I like that? Tastes change. So maybe later in life I might change, but I don't think so on the ones that I really won't like to grow. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel.